My name's Tyler Zander and I'm from Union, Oklahoma. Okay, basketball was my life. I love sports, played baseball, so basketball was pretty much all I really ever lived for. It's kind of like I always looked forward to basketball season. School came fairly easy to me, and in 6th or 7th grade I decided I wanted to become a cardiothoracic surgeon for whatever weird reason, and that kind of that focus motivated me through middle school and high school and even now. Growing up, I was blessed to have an amazing family. My parents are great, probably the most selfless people I know. I have a little brother that's a senior in high school right now, and in a lot of ways we're complete opposites, but definitely works out well. In high school, I thought I had my life figured out. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I saw myself graduating, going on to OSU, going to medical school, becoming a heart surgeon, and being able to make enough money to do whatever I wanted. And that was my idea of success in high school, and that's what drove me to do everything that I did. That's why I graduated valedictorian. That's why I love being in control. That's why I love playing sports. Okay, I'm currently a senior pre-med entrepreneurship major at Oklahoma State. And I went into college at OSU actually as a biochemistry major. I just wanted to be a doctor, but as I got to OSU and shadowed more physicians, I had people telling me that they wish they had more business knowledge, so I switched my major from biochemistry to entrepreneurship. And really now, in my future, I hope to do more than just become a physician. I would like to use my business education to also go into healthcare administration or health policy and be able to have a bigger impact on healthcare than just direct patient-to-patient contact. Like, I would like to do that starting off, but I would like to see my role in healthcare, I guess, expand through business. At OSU, I've loved my time there. It's definitely going to be hard leaving Stillwater. It feels like everybody's family. Right now, I've already applied to medical school, and I guess 2 weeks ago I had my first interview at OU. Absolutely loved it there. Feel like it went great. So hopefully that's where I'm at next year. I'll find out here in late December whether I got in or not. Okay, I see the purpose of my life as being using the skills, the opportunities, the gifts, the adversities that I've been given to glorify God, bring others to Christ, and inspire others. So that's why I try to keep that as the main focus on everything that I do, whether that be working out to inspire others or giving motivational speeches to inspire others and bring others to Christ. I've been blessed with so much in my life, and I feel like it's my job to make the most out of everything I've been given. The summer before my senior year of high school, I was working at a grain elevator in Crimlin, Oklahoma, and on August 4th, 2011, it was the day before my last day of work. I was working. Our job that morning was to move wheat from this large metal building, it's just called like a flat storage, to the big tall silos. And to do so, we had to use something called a floor auger or a grain auger. And pretty much a grain auger is just like a giant metal corkscrew that just spins and moves wheat. So this auger went the length of the floor of the building, and there were boards that was covering it. It just kind of sat right underneath the floor. And a few hours into our day, I was shoveling wheat into the auger into one of the small openings whenever I heard a scream. And when I turned around, it took me a second to process what I was watching, but I was watching one of my coworkers be pulled into the auger. It was essentially grinding his leg up, pulling him further and further in as boards were popping up. So I turned back around, hollered at the third guy who just happened to be in the building, and when I turned back around towards him, the only thought that went through my mind was I can't just stand here. And not knowing how to shut it off or where the shut off switch was even at, I just instinctively ran to him. I remember reaching out to him, and the next thing I knew, my mind went blank.
Fuck!
Ambulance emergency, what's your address?
Zoldet Grain, Kremlin 209, 2nd Street, I think.
209 2nd Street.
I believe.
We're showing 206.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
206 2nd Street in
Kremlin.
Enid? In Kremlin?
Yes.
Okay. What do we have going on, sir?
I guess the kid's in the auger.
Okay. Kids in an auger.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a callback number?
874-2286.
22, what was the last two?
86.
86. How old the kid?
Probably 17.
All right. All right, we will get somebody out there right quick.
Thank you.
Bye.
I braced myself on the floor as it started to pull both of us further in, and the third guy had to run outside the building and clear around the opposite end to shut it off. So when the auger stopped, I panicked. I was screaming. I was cussing. I was trying to pull myself out, but I wouldn't budge. And for that first minute, I was terrified. I wanted to convince myself that it was a nightmare, but it was the realest moment of my life. And more people started to show up, trying to figure out what to do. And my perception, or my demeanor began to change. I wasn't afraid, and that was huge for me. I became a Christian whenever I was about 13, but there were many moments in my life where I wondered whether God was real, whether heaven was real. You know, what if God is not actually real? And death kind of always seemed something that was so far off and so scary, but in that moment, I had accepted the fact that I was going to die, and I wasn't afraid. My parents showed up. My dad was in there pretty much the whole time with me that it took them to get us out. And I just kept telling him to trust God over and over. I told him that I loved him, and I told him to promise me my little brother would be saved. And that was something that I had never thought about before. But in that moment, I wasn't worried about my future. I wasn't worried about losing a leg. I wasn't worried about basketball or school. I wasn't worried about, I even wasn't worried about losing my life. The only thing that I was worried about was the people that I loved and the people around me making it to heaven with me. And that was a turning point for my life. That's whenever I realized what actually is important, what actually matters. It kind of sifted everything else out of my life. So it took rescue workers about an hour and 20 minutes to free us. The entire time we were in the auger, I was fighting sleep, but that was the deal. I didn't know if I was fighting sleep or if I was fighting death. Finally, they had to cut the auger on both ends, and they lifted it out. And about kind of like passed out as they started to pull us out. I remember them pushing us out towards the helicopter, and I told my dad that I loved him. He said he'd see me at the hospital. They loaded me up on the helicopter. I kept telling the flight paramedic to put me to sleep, and he said to give it a second. I told him to tell my parents that I loved them. I remember the helicopter lifting up and turning, and that was the last thing I remember. When my parents arrived at the hospital, my surgeons told them that I had, obviously, my amputation, a tear in my bladder, the worst open pelvic fracture they'd ever seen. So pretty much what an open pelvic fracture is when the auger pulled me in, it just like split me in half like a wishbone, so like you could literally like see up inside me. So with that alone, you have about a 50% chance of survival. So I had that and all my other injuries. So they told my parents there was a 60% chance I wouldn't make it. They really didn't expect me to make it through the night. A week after my accident, I had developed 4 infections. So my white blood cell count was like 44, and normal was like 4 to a 9. So they had to amputate further. I had muscle and tissues that were dying. They had to take some of my glutes. 2 weeks after my accident, they thought they were going to have to amputate my left leg just because they couldn't find where the infection was at. So for about the first 2.5 weeks, my survival was uncertain. For about the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was completely out of it, and I really don't have too much recollection other than just kind of like weird, very weird, strange memories just because I was so drugged up. But in total, I was in the hospital for 72 days. Originally, they thought I'd be there for possibly a year. In that 72 days, I had 30 surgeries and procedures, received 97 units of blood. I could talk all day about my hospital stay if I really, got into it. But I usually leave it to just one story whenever I talk about my hospital stay. About halfway through my time in the hospital, there came a period of about 2 or 3 days where I was in so much pain, no amount of pain medicine would help. I would lay in bed, just squeezing my parents' hands, begging for the pain to stop. And there came the point where I asked myself, how much longer can I do this? How much more can I take? And I looked around my hospital room, and there were cards and posters that filled every inch of the walls, but a piece of notebook paper caught my attention. On this piece of paper, someone had written, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go," Joshua 1:9. And in that moment, I realized how stupid my question was, because I knew that with God I could take this thing on forever. And that's the mentality that I had to get out of the hospital, and the mentality that I needed whenever I got home. The hospital pushed me to my limits to show me that with God I had no limits. When I was in the hospital, I thought all I had to do was get home. I thought the hospital was the biggest battle that I had ahead of me. But the second that I rolled through the front doors of my house, that's when reality really sank in. That's whenever I realized my life was forever different, that I was no longer independent, that I couldn't play basketball, I couldn't run. I felt like people felt sorry for me. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I was jealous of everyone that had 2 legs. I was very bitter and angry. I hated when little kids stared at me. I felt like I looked weird. I had no self-confidence. So for a long time, I struggled emotionally and mentally. Every day I take a shower, I'd sit in the shower and just cry because I thought that I'd lived the best days of my life. I didn't see how my life with 1 leg could ever be as great as it was with 2. And I struggled with that for probably about a year. Physically, I was doing better than the doctors could have ever hoped for. I returned home in October, started going to school again in November for 2 hours. And when I was in the hospital, I'd gotten down to 92 pounds. So kind of my main focus during my recovery time was getting back to where I was. And all of my focus and actions and thoughts were based on Tyler and Tyler's recovery. I started going to school again in November, and towards the end of December, I just started to learn how to walk on my forearm crutches whenever an article came out in my local newspaper. And in this article, they referred to my coworker and I as being crippled. And I hated that word. I was so furious about that. I felt like people felt sorry for me, and I hated that. I felt like they thought I couldn't do all the things that I wanted to do. And I was so mad I wanted to just storm down to the newspaper office and just lie into them. And this fueled me so much that I was so focused on getting better that I told my parents that I was never getting in a wheelchair again. So the next day at physical therapy, I crutched in for the first time. By the time I got inside, I was so worn out, I was ready to go home. And I told my physical therapist my plans. He told me I was crazy, and he told me I just couldn't, drop the wheelchair, go straight to the crutches. And he pulled up a chair for me to sit down in, and I said, "No, I don't think you understand." And every time my leg would get tired, I'd pull myself up in the parallel bars. And he said, I will literally be shocked if you never get in a wheelchair again. And I said, prepare to be literally shocked. And to this day, I've got to get in another wheelchair just because that's the mentality that I developed in the hospital. At that point in my life, I thought that persevering and overcoming and achieving came down to how bad I wanted it. So I kept pushing forward. I was trying, at this point in my recovery, I was trying to get to the other side of an obstacle that did not have another side. So I thought once I get out of the hospital, I'll be happy. Once I start going to school again, I'll be happy. Once I get out of a wheelchair, I'll be happy. Once I get a prosthetic, I'll be happy. But I wasn't. No matter what I achieved, I was still miserable. So that's why I started to think that, I was just destined to be miserable the rest of my life. And ultimately what it took for me to overcome that was a change in perspective and a change in focus. For the longest time, my focus was solely on Tyler and Tyler's recovery. all of my thoughts were thoughts like, why did this have to happen to me? Why can't I be like everyone else? Why would God allow something like this to happen to me? And whenever I took the focus off of myself and put it on God and started asking, what does God want me to do with this? How can I help other people with this? What is His plan for my life? I began to prosper. So whenever I took the focus off of myself and put it on God, that was really the key to my recovery. And that's when I realized that overcoming an obstacle like that in my life wasn't about getting to the other side. It was all about my focus and my perspective. Honestly, probably the whole part of all of this, it's, I guess, the most emotional and means the most to me is all the support that my family and I had. I have just heard so many stories from my family of when I was, basically out of it, and also my entire hospital stay, of just everything that the entire community had done for my family. The day of, I guess so many people were at OU Medical Center that the doctor said that they hadn't seen that many people there for one person since the Oklahoma City bombing. So like just knowing that my family had all of that support was just incredible. I mean, people would just come up and give my parents, money, food. There was actually a lady that lived in Oklahoma City, and she came up and was like, I know this may sound weird, but I go to a church very close to here, and my church wants to bring food every day for your family, and here's a key to my house if you ever need to come take a nap or come take a shower. So just like stuff, like hearing stories like that, like that's what like really means the most to me. The day I came home from the hospital is easily the best day of my life. I had like a police escort clear through town. My dad, I was actually riding in my car, so that was pretty cool. And the fire department led me through town. Like as we passed the fire department, like all the firemen were lined up out front, and they had like the fire truck out with the flag on it. And whenever we turn the corner to go down to my house, I see like 11 school buses lined up, a big train that has like a sign on it that says like "Welcome Home, Tyler." My entire driveway, we live on 5 acres, so we have a really long driveway. My entire driveway was filled with people holding posters, and it was an emotional day. It was a day that, that's in the hospital, that's everything that I was looking forward to, was that day, and it meant so much to me. Just all of that support, and if it wasn't for that, I can't imagine what my recovery would have been like. I mean, Chisholm was great working with me, the entire Enid community and all the communities surrounding it, just everything that they did for us. I'm just so thankful for everybody and that role that they played in my life. And I could honestly, like, a big supporting factor for me, I guess, was my family. And honestly, I get a lot of the credit for everything that I've overcome, and I don't think a lot of it's deserved. I don't think my family gets as much credit as what they do, but I mean, they dropped everything for me. They missed work for 3 months. They were there for me every day. Every day that I thought that my life was over, they were there to pull me through those dark days. There's been 2 points in my life where I wanted to give up, and my prosthetic was one of them. There came a point where I wanted to give up on it, and if it wasn't for my dad, I probably wouldn't have seen it through, honestly. And I'm just so thankful for my parents pushing me to make this happen. Everybody at Scott Savage Prosthetics making this possible, because every time my orthopedic surgeon sees me walk, like he's kind of speechless. Like he doesn't know how I'm able to do it with the level of my amputation, and a lot of that comes down to how great of a surgeon he was, how great everybody at Scott Savage Prosthetics was, and having a prosthetic has completely changed my life. There was a lot of fears in my life as far as like, how am I going to be able to stand and do surgery? How am I going to be able to carry my children someday? How am I going to be able to defend a family someday? Like, those were questions that I was asking myself at 17 that most people don't have to ask, and my prosthetic answered a lot of those questions for me, and it's given me a lot of my self-confidence back too. Had this incident not happened, I think I would be at the same point I'm at today, and I think I would be just as motivated as I am today. But I think my motivation and my focus would be on other things. I think I would do things for the wrong reasons. I think the biggest thing that I've gained from this is having a focus and a perspective on what actually matters in life and not getting caught up in the things that really aren't that important at the end of the day. And I think that I would have, if this would not have all happened, I don't think I would have the same level of trust in God. I don't think I would have the same relationship with God. I don't think my faith would be nearly as strong. And I think I would get worried about just little petty stuff that actually doesn't matter. I think I would encourage other people to take their focus off of themselves and put it on God, because I believe that with an eternal perspective set on God, there's nothing more motivating and more fulfilling than knowing you can use the skills, the opportunities, and even the adversities in your life to glorify God and bring other people to Christ. And that's a powerful force. Like, in my mind, that's the most motivating force that is out there, and the most fulfilling force. And additionally, like, with this eternal perspective on God, there's nothing that this world can throw at you that actually amounts to anything. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9.